Howdy, friends and neighbors. Professor Parks, PhD here. I make content on astronomy, science, skepticism, and mental health. And today I could not sleep, so I am again going live randomly in the middle of the night. It's about 2 a.m. my time, just to kind of discuss some things. Primarily, as the title would imply, I'm going to be talking about faith, science, because I'm getting a lot of questions about that lately. Gotten some before, but particularly with my recent content on Will Duffy and creationism, or my future content on creationism, obviously people are apparently a bit curious as to hold, how I can believe in something supernatural and yet call myself a man of science. So, yeah, hold on a second. Make myself look a little more presentable. So, I've talked about this a few times over a variety of different streams. Yep, and that broke. Talked about this over a variety of different streams, but I figured I might as well talk about it again because I'm still getting questions on it. And fudge, I can't seem to find another hair tie. Maybe there's one down here. And maybe I was gonna say maybe I'm shit out of luck, but no. I have a pink one. Because pink in the right places is awesome. Anyway, so yeah, faith, science, all that sort of thing. My usual go-to is that in matters of science, I'll go to books like Bob, which may or may not be on my desk. It is not. Oh. This is Bob. Howdy, Jason. This is Bob, or colloquially known as Big Orange Book. It is the Introduction to Modern Astrophysics by Carolyn Ostley. If you're going into astronomy as a career, this needs to be in your bookshelf or your PDF folder. I've never found any more comprehensive text on astrophysics that is also easily readable. Best book in my opinion. Like I said, if I want to talk about science, or if I have a question about how what are the ionization states within, say, the Orion Nebula, for example, I'd go to that. If I wanted to know how best to behave or go about talking about or go about addressing things such as the nature of answers in Genesis and so forth, I would go to this book, which is my Bible, which is right over here. In terms of how I behave or how I present myself, and if I have questions, and believe me, I often have questions about how best to present myself as a good and honest person, then I don't go to Bob, I go to the Bible. So, and I fully recognize that my belief in God is completely irrational. I have no proof for you. I don't. And not only that, I'm unwilling to give you any proof for it. Because if you demand proof for a divine being, then you really don't understand what faith is. Faith is the idea that well, first off, for me, let me just speak about me. For me, my faith is something where I am, I've said in the past, I have faith that I'm doing the right thing. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I only have faith that I'm doing the right thing. Because if I knew, then there comes the quandary of why am I doing it? Am I doing it because it's the right thing, or am I doing it because I might get some kind of reward out of it at the end? I'm doing this because I have faith, not that I'm getting a reward out of the end. And I realize there are holes in this particular train of logic that you can run a Mack truck through. But point being that I'm trying to make is that this is a wholly irrational thing. I can't prove it to you. I don't want to prove it to you. All I ask really is that you accept it. This is who I am. This is what I am. This is what I believe. And um, I just find it curious because when I was in this, I was in the debunking space in the beginning, you know, a lot of people, I found a lot of anti-theists in there, particularly when you had Sir Sick or someone like that covering um, young Earth creationists. I got, you know, Book of Fairy Tales, praise to Sky Daddy, shit like that. And so I really didn't express my how my faith all that much because, yeah, I was going to get shit for it. I knew I was going to get shit for it. But over time, I just said to fuck with it, and I just decided to bring it out more and more often, and now it's kind of part of my shtick, for better or for worse now. But I don't know. I've never questioned anybody why they are Jewish. Never questioned anybody why they're Buddhist. Never questioned anybody why they're an atheist or why they're agnostic. I just accept it. That is ultimately faith and belief is something that is yours and yours personally, and it's none of my fucking business. Now, all I can do, and I know that the Bible tells me that I should evangelize, that I should evangelize, that I should, um, you know, that I should care about my brothers and sisters in Christ and worry about whether or not they're going to hell and all that kind of good stuff. But the Bible also tells me that the only person who knows whether or not someone's going to hell is the Lord, God. So this is a question that I've had. This is something I've debated with myself for years. Is just how do I reconcile those two things? And particularly since my lived experience, I knew from a very basically college, really, that if you preach at somebody, if you pound your Bible at somebody, they're either going to ignore you. At best, they're going to just politely nod and say, okay, or they're going to get angry with you. Why? Because this is such a personal journey. Everyone's spiritual journey or not, everyone's relationship or not with the divine is a personal one. And there's a lot of judgment associated with that journey. And so when you start telling people how you think they should live, they're going to take it personal and they're probably going to react strongly to it. I know I sure should do. So 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 I still struggle with that. The best thing I can come up with of how I am to both try to bring people over to God and help save people or what have you, and also understand that it is not ultimately my decision, is not ultimately my business, is that I have to live through example. I have to get one of the other reasons why to live a Christ-like life is to try to be an example to other people on how to live. And if they can live if they choose to live a better life or Christ-like life, I mean, there's just so much. Like I'm even judging myself for it. Like the idea of my holding myself as some kind of example that others should live by is ridiculous. But my plan, the only thing I can come up with is I have to live a good life. Well, one, because it's a good thing to do. God will be happy. And I like God to be happy because I love God. But also, maybe other people will live a similar life and be good and all that kind of good shit. I don't know. My point is, again, This is a personal thing. I can't justify it to you, and I'm not going to try to justify it to you. But what I am going to tell you is that I do recognize that my beliefs are not scientific in any way. They're not rational in any way. And that's okay. People have irrational beliefs all the time. Love is not rational. I don't care if it's love of God, love of your cat. It's not rational. It's not rational for me to want to throw myself in front of a moving car to save my cat. But I'm going to do it. Well, at least I hope I would do it. Because there's no upshot for me. I mean, I could just get another cat. Being hit by a car, I'm going to get injured. I might get injured so bad that I get thrown into debt for years with medical bills. I might, have permanent injury. I might die. So there's no upshot with me saving a cat, other than the fact that I love that cat. Howdy, Tiles. So having an irrational belief is not bad. And I don't know where this idea, particularly in this space, that having irrational beliefs is somehow lesser, is somehow makes one stupider or more ignorant or unable to make decisions. So they used to accuse women of back in the day with hysteria. They were hysterical, so they can't possibly understand. They can't, travel the nuances of life and do things like vote. And I found that to be rather bullshit, in my opinion. If we all thought, we're not Vulcans. None of us are going to think critically the are throughout in our entire lives, and I don't think we should. I think there are certain things in life where, yes, your decisions need to come from a place of emotion. Because again, love isn't rational. If you're without love and without irrational thinking, somebody would not save someone else simply for the sake of it. Because again, that's not in your own self-best interest unless that person, can make you richer or what have you. Irrationality is not a boogeyman to be avoided. It's not a slur to throw at people. So yeah. And I'll even throw in this nugget, which I'm pretty sure any sort of howdy Tony, pretty sure somebody who cares and wants to tear me down is going to throw this at me, but fuck it, who cares? If you can't sleep, drink Monster. Good plan. Completely rational plan. So I am not born again. Never have been. I have never in my life been at one point in my life a cock smoking drug user who snorted cocaine off of a hooker's tits. Never once. Never once was a fornicator or a wife beater or an adulterer or anything like that. Just me. Always have been. Always will be. When I was around, the first time I became aware that of something greater than myself was actually in a moment of much needed, what's the word I'm looking for? Self contemplation, what self awareness? Sorry, my glasses. Fair, Tony, fair. Was when I was 13 years old. When I was in ninth grade. I think I was 13. When I was in ninth grade, I was in the International Baccalaureate program. Did not handle it well for a number of different reasons. Now, I'm pretty sure I believe that there was something greater than me prior to that, because I remember thinking about God and thinking about gods, really. I actually started as a pagan, to be perfectly frank, which became Wiccan, then off. I knew I believed that. I knew I believed that there was something bigger, but I didn't really think about it so hard. But then my ninth grade year came around, and things got dark. And I didn't try to unalive myself, but I scared the shit out of some people. And I found myself fairly quickly in a mental hospital. My my first to be or not to be, that is the question. I found myself in my first stint in the booby ward, funny farm, rubber room, uh, padded rompus room, however you want, nut house, charter mental hospital. Spent a week there. Spent boy, was that an experience. I'll spare you the fun details. I learned only two things in my time in the nut house. And to me, nut house, the way that I'm speaking about mental hospitals, that's kind of my N word. I'm really not, I really don't like it when other people talk about mental asylums or call them asylums. But I am so embittered with the whole mental health care system because of my experience with it that I'm going to call them that. And I appreciate if no one else did, at least not in my presence. Anyway, um, yeah, so I went there and I learned two things. One, the power of empathy. So got in and they stuck me in a, and they basically stuck me in a group, like the evening group. No idea what was going on. I'm fucking 13. All I know is I was in class this morning. Now I'm stuck in a place where they tell me I can't leave, and they're not. They tell me and they're not giving me an answer as to when I can leave, or really why I'm even there. I mean, I know I was there because I scared the shit out of or apparently I scared a certain psychiatrist, and they decided that for my best own interest, I needed to be there. But anyway, so I'm in this group, bunch of dudes, from ages 11 to probably 18, 19. And yeah, you heard that right. There was an 11-year-old in there. And they're talking, they go around, they're like, hey, why don't you introduce yourself? And I was like, hi, I'm Rob. And they ask me, why are you here? And I had no answer. The only thing that popped in my head was, I don't have any friends. And a long-haired, hippie-looking dude, long-haired, blonde guy named Lewis, um, looked at me without batting an eye and said, "Well, you got one now." Oh no, I learned three things. So I learned the power of empathy. I learned how to mosh from Lewis, and I learned all about LSD from Lewis. So I can thank LSU. I can thank Lewis for us some of my more memorable times in college. Um, the 11-year-old was a cokehead, by the way. That's why he was there. Fun times. One of the things the inmates like to do to cut the boredom was to tell the 11-year-old that the new guy had coke and that he would give it to you if you asked nice. And so, yeah, that was fun. Anyway, so I got out that business, and that led into therapy. That led into all sorts of fun stuff. So, um, but ultimately, what it left me with was, what the fuck am I doing? Um, I'm I'm a 15-year-old kid, and I'm seriously contemplating not being alive anymore. Um, which they tell me is a bad thing. So my brain went to, all right, well, if I if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to keep going, I got to figure out what it is I want to keep going for, or why, I guess. And I don't know why. I couldn't tell you. One, because my memory sucks, and this was like fucking 30 years ago. two, I don't even know if I could have told you back then. But I went to the divine as I knew it. My answer was to seek comfort in the divine, purpose in the divine. And so I went to, so I would lay awake at night and I would think to myself, what do I believe in? What do I feel to be true? And I had a list. And then sometime later, I went to Walden Books back when they had those, back when bookstores were still kind of a thing, when you actually had more than one book or two bookstores, Barnes and Noble or Amazon. You had Walden Books and B. Dalton. Well, I went to Walden Books and um, my brother was off looking at sci-fi stuff. I really wasn't in the mood to read that sort of thing. So I think it was the UFO abductions that got me. There was a book about UFOs, got me into the New Age aisle. Then I started stuff like seeing stuff with like pagans and stuff, pagan, Wiccan, witches, and all that. I'm like, oh well, this is interesting. This is cool. So I pick up this book, thin maroon book, called Book of Pagan Rituals. Flip a couple pages, and has a checklist. Literally has a bullet pointed checklist of if you believe this, you very well may be a pagan. And sure as shit, I think I checked off almost all boxes, if not all of them. And hence my 15-year journey as a dirty, dirty pagan witch. Did it help with the mental health? Did it help stop me from trying to unalive myself? No. Did it keep me out of mental hospitals? No. Do I think it should have? No. That's not what the belief was for. Belief was to help me figure out where the fuck I was going with myself. It wasn't a I need to find God in order to save my soul, or I needed to find God in order to be right, be healed, or whatever. No. It was I needed something. I needed a direction. I needed somewhere to go, something to look to. And so, yeah, that's why. And I went to God. And again, I've always felt that there was something up there. I always felt that there was something around me. Again, the very beginning, well, I guess halfway through now, like I said, for 15 years, I believed in a god and a goddess. I believed in basically metaphysical deities that could be represented by a whole slew of pantheons. Ultimately, I found Wiccan's moral philosophy to be, shall we say, anemic. And that ultimately led me into going to Christianity. And I told myself, because of people that I grew up with, particularly Vic, that if I were ever going to convert to Christianity, it would have to be Catholicism, because Catholicism was the only one that seemed to me to be intellectually thought through and honest. Now, I realize through my own theological journey that that's complete bullshit. Actually, I do like some things that the Lutherans had to say, but whatever. I stuck with Cathol, and I stayed a Catholic for 7 years. Stopped taking communion for about 3-4 years in, because I was dissatisfied with how the church felt about the spiritual rights of women and homosexuals. And I figured that if they didn't change, they were not worthy. The church was not worthy to give me the sacrament of communion. And then when the whole child thing happened, that story blew up, and I realized, after probably too much time, I realized that they weren't going to do shit about it. I left the church. I didn't leave Catholicism exactly. I didn't leave Christianity by any means. Well, I'll get to that in a sec. didn't change my theological viewpoints the on things. It just simply changed my my church, I guess. You know, all of the canon law, all of the um, Pope being always right when he's sitting on his throne, all that sort of shit. That I left, but um, certain key aspects I still stick with me. Works, for example, is never going to give that up. In order to properly be saved, you not only have to, well, actually, in order to be saved, you have to do works as part of accepting Lord Christ as your Lord and Savior. But anyway, well, then I got my PhD and I got married for the second time, and I moved to Baton Rouge, and yeah, some God left that connection I had with the divine went away. Don't know where it went. Don't know why it went. Um, and I was an atheist for about 4 years, give or take. And then it came back. I'm not going to get into details as to why it left and why it came back. That's not really the point of this stream per se. But it came back, and now I'm still, I consider myself a Christian. At this point, I really would like to look into becoming an Episcopalian, but obstacles, both objective and not so much, are standing in my way from actually seeking out a church, a community in Christ, as it were. The point I want to, one of the points that I want to make with all of that is this notion that I found of people within this community who seem to be of the belief that Christians, or God bless them, theists, I fucking hate that term. Yeah, let's just take all of the world's religions, let's take all of the world's theologies, and let's just dump them all into one easy to handle package. Because, you know, I think the same way a Hindu does. Exactly the same way. So yeah. Theists. They have this notion that theists don't think. We don't think critically. We don't ask questions. We just do. We just blindly follow. We read a book, and we're like, yep, I got to do what that says because that's what the book says. Does it make any sense? It's not important. That's what the book says, so I'm going to do it. That's what us theists, we do. We don't think critically. Well, I'm here, folks, to tell you that's some bullshit. I have never, back when I was a witch, when I was a Christian, when I was an atheist, I have never stopped thinking about metaphysical issues. I've never, well, actually, more importantly, I've never stopped thinking about moral issues as to what it is to be moral and how it is that I want to obtain those moral goals. I'm always thinking about it. And it frustrates me to no end when folks will throw around blanket terms like theist or Christians. They do that. They do that. They don't believe this. They don't believe that. You know what that is? That is stereotyping. You know what stereotyping leads to? Bigotry. Now, I'm not saying that Christians are persecuted, not in any way whatsoever at all, claiming that I have been persecuted because I am a Christian. What I can say is that I have felt uncomfortable in certain spaces because of the fact that I believe in God, and I have changed my behavior because of that. Not no more. Not going to do it anymore. So, um, so yeah, so not persecuted, but have I had to hide myself to a certain extent because of shit within the debunking community? Yeah, yeah, I have. Um, be it right or wrong, I'm not accusing anyone exactly. Not judging anyone. I am just simply relating my experience of because of things I have heard people say, because of people claiming that Christians are in cults, and I know I am not going to ever let that drop. Um, is being told that because I believe in God, I am in a fucking cult. Um, I have had to change my behavior, and that fucking is not acceptable in any way whatsoever. And so, uh, howdy, Dora. I don't have my glasses on, so I'm only here because it them groups. Well, yeah. All right. I mean, and that's I think this is valid across the board. Many people in the skeptic community are only here because it gives them groups they feel it social acceptable to yell at. I think that's one of the issues or one of the things surrounding flat earth or science skepticism is that I think there are folks out there that are just simply seeking community. They're seeking a place where they can feel comfortable. They have certain ideas of the world and they want to be in a space where they can express themselves without being called a moron or without being called delusional or um, bereft of critical thought. I get that. Perfectly well get that. I believe me, I am looking for a community forever. I've always been looking for some kind of place to connect or someone to connect with. Um, and yeah, so um, I can definitely well understand why that. And I can also understand why there is a group of folks out there who have been persecuted, legitimately persecuted by Christians, evangelicals, in my opinion. You know, there have been people out there who have been told by evangelicals that they are sinners, that they are lesser, that they are evil. And if I were raised with that shit, I would be pissed off too. And I can easily see yet again why there is a community that people, they find people on the internet, they find communities to band together and be able to express themselves and feel as if they're in a safe place and also have them um you know have they're the bad guys, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. So for evangelical Christians, all you damn atheists out there, for all the anti-theists, all you damn Christians out there, you're all the root of all evil. I hate to break it to you, but humanity sucks. We're all the root of all evil. Oh, that is a shame to hear. Tony, I've been getting headaches myself. Not migraines by any stretch. My mother used to get migraines. God, I hope I'm not inheriting that. I've inherited enough of her bullshit. I don't need to inherit her migraines. Um, so yeah, I have faith because I've always had faith. It's always been a part of who I am. I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's wrong to have faith. I think it can be a very powerful thing. And personally, um, I wish everyone had faith. But that being said, it's not my place to judge. I am not ultimately, when we all die, something's going to happen or not. Whatever that is has nothing to fucking do with me. So it is not my place to weigh in on what's going to happen to anyone else when it ends. Would I like everyone to have faith? Yes. Do I think that people who don't have faith are fucked? No. Do I find them weird? Only insofar as they have a different light on lived experience than I do. Um, you know, I lived as an atheist for 4 years, and wasn't the wasn't the best part of my life. Wasn't the best 4 years of my life. Quite the opposite. Um, I could joke that Louisiana is so soul sucking it can actually suck out God. It is such a shit place that not even God can live there. But that would be a bad joke. But you know, I don't. Hindus, Jews, Muslims, Baha'i, any person of any faith or not faith, you do you, which comes down to science. And where I think at least some of the conflict between science and religion exists. And I'm actually, I used to think that science and religion were essentially two sides of the same coin. They were two ways of asking effectively the same question, which is, what is universe? Science is attempting to look at it in a materialistic way. What is, how is the universe built? How does the universe operate? What are the laws which dictate certain physical behaviors for physical phenomenon? Whereas religion, spirituality, metaphysics, that was studying ultimately sort of the why of it all. Why are we here? Why do the physical laws that we see on the other side of the coin, why do they operate in the way they do in order to um well at all? What does this have to do with our paths in life? That sort of thing. And I would say, and I still believe that, but I would say that one does not affect the other, or at least or my goal is that one does not inform on the other. And I don't, that part I'm not entirely certain of anymore. Because um there's something to me anyway, there's something aspirational about irrationality. There is something, I mean, if we're going to just basically label metaphysics as irrational, as not following rational thought, I don't know. I'm riffing here. I can't sleep. Is that, you know, Adam Frank, who's an author I like, he talks about science versus he has a book called Science or the Sacred Flame, Science and Religion. And he is of the opinion that there really only up until recently has there been a real combat, us or them mentality when it comes to science and religion. That even back during the Copernican revolution, there was not really a contest between science and religion, because most of the people, if not all of the people that were Galileo, Copernicus, Kepler, Newton, they were all religious men. They all had faith in God in one form or another. So it was not a us or them kind of thing. It was not a science or religion. It was just ultimately what it came, for my money, it came down to control. It came down to the freedom of thought. Is, do we allow dogmatic religious beliefs, or really just dogmatic beliefs, to impinge our accepting of reality? With the Copernican revolution, obviously there was a lot of pushback. Um, And there is some debate as to whether or not Copernicus actually believed the sun was the center of the universe, or that his model was simply just a mathematical tool. I'm of the opinion, after reading more into it, that Copernicus was someone who believed the sun was actually at the center of the universe, rather than just using his system as a nice mathematical tool for determining astrological charts. But with Copernicus, that didn't, he moved God in his mind. What I've read by him is that instead of God residing with us at the earth and above earth and all that, God now was the sun, essentially, that the sun was reminiscent of God. But my point is that there wasn't really a battle between the two. What the battle was whether or not we would allow science, what we see in science, to actually direct how we looked at the universe mechanically from a spiritual standpoint. And so at the time, the church had been very much absorbed the Aristotelian philosophies of the day, where, effectively perfect things were circles, perfect things moved in cycles at uniform rates, things of that nature. Augustine, and then later Aquinas would basically codify this into believing that the hell was literally the center of the earth and the heavens were above it. And so that is what the church had a problem was with the Copernican model, was not insofar that it made better, that it could help better astrological tables and such. It was the idea that science was telling religion, or the people in power, religious power, that their previous viewpoints were wrong, that the previous teachings from church fathers like Aquinas, like Augustine, they were wrong in their interpretation of things. And so, and I think that, and so that I think is what has gotten exacerbated in the present era. That is where the true church and fight between science and faith has come to, is that there is movement, and honestly, it started on the religious side. Yes, it's us religious folks who started it, but I'm also seeing it a bit on the secular side as well, in that it's about, how should I phrase this? The use of belief in order to control, and I've talked about this before, and I want to see if I can do it in a more creative way, with so I don't sound like I'm repeating myself. But there is there is so all right, this is going to be supposition, because again, whoops, didn't mean to do that. That one, hit a wrong button. So I think it started with white people. Yeah, I'm gonna go with there. Male white people to begin with. Male white people, um, at least in the West, obviously, because there aren't really many white people, or weren't very many white people back in the day. But we did get everywhere. We did get around. Anyway, white men were the power, had political power, they had economic power, they had social power. And if you got power, you want to hold on to it. You want to hold on to that in any way you possibly can. And I think, and it is my view of history, that one of the main motivators, or one of the main ways that you can rally others to your cause so that you can keep power, is by claiming divine authority. If you can claim that you have some kind of divine right to the power that you have, then it will be easier for you to control everyone else such that you can remain in power. And so I think the with the church specifically, and then later with certain governments, and then finally with just certain social realms or social circles, that the Bible is, or at least the way that it was, women should be in the kitchen. They should be barefoot and pregnant. They should not have the right to vote because the Bible says they shouldn't have it. Because there are passages in the Bible that clearly indicate that women should be, women's only jobs, there are two of them, is to serve the dude and to pop out kids. Mainly so that the dude can be served, I guess. I don't know. So, and women obviously wanted more rights. They wanted to be, they wanted to vote. They wanted to have, they realized they were people too, I guess. Again, sorry, riffing. And they fought back. And so, you give them more ground. And, the people who wanted to hold on to these power, these white men, a pocket of them became more and more sort of radicalized and just hung on to this very conservative band of Christianity. And slowly over time, that has been eroded away, or erosion has occurred. Women have gotten more rights. Blacks have gotten rights. Homosexuals have gotten rights. Trans folks for, I think, 6 months had rights. And then, shit went backwards. Pendulum swung the other way. What this has to do with science is that what I'm seeing now is sort of an analogy, or something analogous to what happened in the past, is that you have people who want power, or have a little power and want more power, or unfortunately in this country do have power, and they want to stay that way. They want to stay there, or they want other people to do what they tell them to do. They want them to live a certain lifestyle that they want. And so they can't really go to the God thing anymore, because for better or for worse, we live in, particularly in the United States, it's a plurality of thought, in that I don't know the percentages, but I do not, we have enough percentages of Catholics. We have enough percentages of moderate Christians. We have enough percentages of evangelicals, of Jews, of Muslims, of Hindus. We have enough voices such that one can no longer appeal to a moral authority such as the Bible in order to really get any kind of traction. One could argue that the evangelicals kind of have, because of Trump. But what I've noticed in that movement is that instead of going to the moral authority of the Bible, evangelicals are now trying to get another form of authority, or another form of validation, another form of divine right, as it were, and that is science. Maybe it's because they understand that the divine right, the going to the Bible, isn't attractive to a lot of people, or isn't a effective way to get people onto their side. And so, when my conversations with evangelicals, they think that, all right, life has become more secular, so therefore life has become more scientific. So, hey, what if we start appealing to science? What if we start trying to use science to justify our viewpoints? Then we can get people on our side from there and we can get them under control. Um, and that is not what science is about. Science isn't about control. It's not about, it's honestly, as someone from the quote unquote physical sciences, I wouldn't say that it's about human nature at all, but that would be doing disservice to social sciences such as psychology, sociology, anthropology, so things of that nature. So there's more to it. Obviously, I don't. This is me just rambling at night, but science at its core is motivated by data. If we are to the if we assume science is a spherical cow, if we remove reality from it, then science operates only under the influence of data. Scientific interpretation data is collected, it is analyzed, it is interpreted, and then the next round of science that is done after that is motivated by those results and those interpretations. But unfortunately, we live in a world that isn't a spherical cow. It has friction, it has air resistance. Things are not perfect spheres. And for this, the asymmetries come into bias. Is that all of us have bias. We're human. We can't not have bias. All of us are by nature irrational to one extent or another. We can try to mitigate it as much as we can, but it's there. We're humans. So therefore, we are going to be biased. But if you're a scientist, and again, I was going to say this is my opinion, but obviously it's my opinion. If you are a scientist, one of your primary jobs, which I don't think is honestly taught is not really focused on and it's not taught well um, coming up, is, I mean, we talk about confirmation bias. You know, when we are in my education, talked about confirmation bias, talked about selection bias. Selection bias is, well, first off, confirmation bias is only paying attention to that evidence which is in support of your hypothesis and ignoring any other evidence that is contrary to it or dismissing it for whatever reason. Selection bias is trying to generalize a solution from only a select data set, such as looking at rates of sickle cell anemia in whites and saying that that rate is exceedingly low. That for humanity, people really do not get sickle cell anemia. That is a example of sickle cell, or that is an example of selection bias. You have not taken a true population. You have not looked at the true population. You've only looked at a select portion of it, and so your results are going to be biased because of that. You have observational bias, which is similar to that, in that you have, because for astronomers, because bright things are easier to look at, and we have technological problems with looking at things that are really faint, we often are observationally or brightness limited, in that we are only seeing the galaxies of only a certain brightness. So we can't generalize things over all galaxies unless we are actually looking at or sampling all galaxies. So going through academia, I learned about those things. I learned about conversation, like I said, confirmation, selection, observational biases, all that. systematic bias or systematic errors, which I guess is a bias. But we never really talked about worldviews. We never talked about in any kind of depth um, or what to do about uh, subjective biases in the sense of for to give you a real life example. One of the things that I when I was first coming up and I was a grad student, this is back in the early 90s, so I think this was prior to WMAP or excuse me, this is prior to Kobe. Or if Kobe was a thing, then I wasn't really wasn't really tuned into it. But I really, really wanted, um, really, really wanted the universe to be cyclic because I was a Wiccan, and one of the fundamental things about Wicca and many pagan faiths is the cyclic nature of things. You have summer, you have spring, summer, fall, winter. Things are born, things grow, things um, decay or get worse, and then die, and then get reborn, and all that kind of good stuff. So my religious thinking pervaded into my scientific worldview, and I thought, you know, the universe has got to be cyclic. It's got to be Big Bang, Big Bang, Big Crunch, baby, and then it just keeps doing that. That's got to be what the universe is doing. And so I would dismiss any sorts of thoughts about how that was actually probably the least likely case of all of the cases. At that point, there were only three, and I remember having to fight that. I remember thinking to myself, all this data has got to be wrong until at one point I was like, this is a whole lot of data that has to be wrong in order for me to be right about this. And I really don't have a very strong position to stand on. The reason why I feel this way is because I want the universe to work this way. I want the universe to be cyclic because it feels better, because it makes more sense to me than to think of a universe that had some kind of weird start but no end. Like, and that still bothers me to this day. This idea that there is some kind of t equals zero, which we currently cannot define, but for lack of a better term, we don't have any evidence that there was anything prior to t equals zero. So, for lack of any better uh, motivation, then there's no reason to think that there was not that that wasn't the beginning. So this idea that there was some kind of beginning to all things and yet not an end bothers the fuck out of me. It on a deeply personal level. So, but I recognize, but again, I recognize through my own um through my own battles with this sort of thing and other cases in science that um, science doesn't give a shit what I had to say about it. It is what it is, and the data is going to bear out what it is. So therefore, I either got to get on board or I'm going to look like an idiot sometime down the line when I get proven wrong or shown to be wrong. Um, and that sort of battle with your own preconceptions of what the universe should be in the face of what science is telling us. You know, some people that may not be a problem. Some people go through it and they might, you know, they may have, they either may have no preconceptions whatsoever what the universe should be or how it needs to be. I find that difficult to believe, but people might be that way, or they might not care enough or really at all. They might have a preconception, but they don't have any skin in the game. They don't care if they get shown to be wrong or not. And so these sort of philosophical problems really don't arise for them. But in any case, these sorts of things, these sorts of questions are never addressed in academia, or at least I have never seen them addressed in academia. We just kind of ho hum and you know say that we're not biased by anything. I Yeah. So I so when people like Sabina or others bring up the fact that there may be that science is a religion or something of that nature, it's not. It's not. Um, Having been a part of science and having been a part of a very organized religion, I can tell you that they are in no way the same. However, there are things about science, current scientific endeavor, that do have certain aspects of faith to them, and do have certain biases within them that aren't really talked about. And these are problems that need to be addressed. But again, they're not so overblown as to make the claim that flat earthers do, that all of science is invalid and that it should be thrown out, and it is not a valid way of looking at the world, looking at the universe, and trying to figure out what is physically going on in it. We are human. Everything we do is going to be flawed. Everything we do is going to have certain drawbacks. We're going to make mistakes, and there is nothing we can do about it other than to try to shore up those mistakes with the understanding that we will never get it perfect. Yet another reason why we can't prove shit. Because proving, to me, proof is perfection. Absolute proof is absolute perfection. You're always going to have some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not clarity. You're going to have uncertainty. You're going to have some sort of uncertainty in terms of the description of something. Even the Earth is a sphere. No, not real. No, it's not. The Earth is not a sphere. It's an oblate spheroid. Even that, I think, is not a precisely accurate term. There's always going to be some kind of uncertainty, some kind of vagueness in our perceptions of things. Now, what it comes down to is how important is that vagueness in terms of practical applications. For all practical applications, the Earth is a sphere, and if your and for those applications where that's not accurate, then you have people like PhD Tony who can tell you what the shape of the Earth actually is to a much more with much more precision, or the precision that you need in order to do whatever it is you need to do in order to get those minerals out of the ground. So, uh, so yes, science is not perfect, but it is not what AIG, Answers in Genesis, and Young Earth Creationists want it to be. Science does not start off with, or science as a whole, as imperfect as it is, does not work under a worldview. It does not presuppose something is correct that is not supported by scientific evidence, and then force observations to fit into that worldview. Which when I actually do the stream, apologize, I meant to do a stream Sunday about what is science and how does it differ from what the Answers in Genesis folks think science is. I was supposed to do that on Sunday. I was not feeling well. And so, yeah, I didn't. I still plan on doing that stream, but I just don't know when. But from Lyle's book, Taking Back Astronomy, from a couple of pages on their website, they actually take the exact opposite view of, again, in my opinion, how science should actually operate. They make the assertion that not only can you not approach science or approach an understanding of the physical nature of the universe with an open mind, without a worldview, but your worldview must be that of the God in the Bible. That you can only understand the universe properly if you first accept the Bible as truth. Then it goes through. And that is how they make their claim that the Bible supports science. It does not, because your foundation is erroneous. Science comes from a place of openness. Again, it stands on the shoulders of giants. Someone somewhere put down the foundation of scientific evidence. That then got built on. Then the next layer got built on. Then the next layer got built on. Then the next layer got built on. Then some dude came around with a wrecking ball and knocked all that shit down. And then they rebuilt upon the wreckage. And they built and they built. And then some other dude came by and slammed that shit and knocked it all down. And they built and they built and they built. You take the current understanding of general relativity. I've said before, I don't read Popper. Popper is very dull. I would marathon Tolkien before I would read Popper, because Popper reads like Whitehead, and holy fuck. Yeah, I literally cannot think of two individuals who write, I was going to say the most boringest, but that's not that not good English. I just cannot express to you. I pick up Popper. I pick up his. I can't even remember what the work is. That's People often quote it for the scientific method and all that. I pick it up. I read a paragraph. I just want to chew my own leg off to get away. So I read Kuhn. Much more interesting, much more top-down view of things. He looks at the philosophy of science, of how science is done on the large scale, and his work is paradigm driven. In his conception of how science operates, is that science starts off with a paradigm. Let's say the Ptolemaic Aristotelian paradigm, where the universe is dominated, or that physics is motivated by certain physical laws. Those physical laws are: a sphere is perfect, it is unchanging, it is unblemished. All things move unless something funky is happening. All things move at uniform rates in said circles. And then science progresses within that paradigm. So all scientific endeavors, at least astronomically speaking, use that paradigm in order to answer questions about how planets are moving around, or where planets are going to be in the future. In the early days, astronomical endeavors were very limited, in that there were only a few questions that people really wanted answers to, and that was basically, when is Mars going to be in Aquarius next? That sort of shit. But then astronomy became more sophisticated, and with these observations, what Kuhn says is that when you have this paradigm, most of the work that is done by science in the inter-crisis periods only serves to validate itself. Basically, the science that is done so as to verify that the base paradigm is accurate, that the Earth is the center of the universe, or the center of the universe, and all things revolve around it. until data makes that impossible, until the experiments get to a point of of such precision or inventiveness that they find something, they find a phenomenon that cannot be explained within that paradigm. And then then another observation is found that basically there are problems start arising, that there are certain uh, fundamental differences, there are fundamental problems within the paradigm. For with the Einstein revolution, I need to learn more about it. I'm finding that my understanding of that is extremely superficial. But ultimately, from my understanding, is that it things broke to the point that there was almost this idea that there had to be two sets of natural laws. Those laws uh, that were dictated by Maxwell, and then those laws that were dictated by Newton. 'Cause again, by Maxwell basically said things that were communicated, the fact that things were communicated or information was communicated at the speed of light. Newton said that things were communicated essentially instantaneously. Those two things are irreconcilable with each other unless they are two separate laws of physics, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, particularly since there is no physical, or there's nothing to motivate such a thought. And so that continues until someone, in that case Einstein, came up with a better paradigm. Developed this paradigm, it was then tested, and then it was explored, it was then accepted, and then now we are in a and then for the last 100 years or so, science been primarily validating that relativity, general relativity, and all of the other aspects. This is, again, a narrow part of the whole, but basically justifying that yes, our paradigm is correct. These observations do actually validate that our understanding of physics is correct. For my money, I think that we are now heading into yet another crisis. That things such as the in cycle in reconciliation, the fact that quantum mechanics and general relativity can't be friends, the fact that dark energy is a thing, even the fact that dark matter is a thing. Um, these are not well explained by general relativity, and so it is my opinion that these are signposts to tell us that general relativity is not the answer. That it is good for what we're doing now, but if we want to learn more about the universe, particularly things that are going really fast at really small spaces, then our understanding needs to be improved. And so until someone with a brain way bigger than mine, probably not as adorable as me, but definitely with a brain bigger than mine, is gonna figure out um, how that all gets fixed. What is actually going on? So, in terms of beliefs, in terms of what this has to do with worldviews, is that one could make the case that a paradigm is a worldview. As I just said, Kuhn would have us believe that the vast majority of science in this inner crisis time just simply goes to validating itself, validating its own basic principles. You could think of that as, well, if your worldview is that God exists, then um, isn't that the same as what Answers in Genesis is doing? Is that using science to illustrate or to prove that God exists? I would say no, because of something that is very that come that that is crucial. The key point is that the paradigm itself came from data. The paradigm itself came from observation. It um, came from an explanation of something that we see around us. As faulty as Aristotle's natural science was, his physics, his biology to it, from my understanding, as faulty as it did come from observations. Now, were his laws, was his worldview, or rather his paradigm and all that, was that derived from empirical testing? No, it was logically derived from these observations, but it was still based on observations. God does not satisfy that criteria, because by God's very nature, God cannot be proved. God cannot be used as a proximate cause for anything, because we cannot definitively see God's action. My feeling is that I can feel God's action. I know he exists because I feel him with me, and I feel his influence on me in my actions. Can I test that? No. Can I come up with write a Python code to tell you just how much of an influence God is to me as opposed to my biological imperatives? No, I can do none of that, because that's not what science is. That is a metaphysical. That is a metaphysical thing. God is a metaphysical thing. I cannot apply science to metaphysics, and so therefore, I cannot test God. I cannot put God in a test tube. I cannot weigh God. I cannot figure out how many angels are dancing on the head of this pen right now. The answer is 42, by the way. I cannot do any sort of empirical analyses of God or anything related to God's realm. Therefore, it is not appropriate to state that God is a proximate cause for any physical action. Because if you cannot do science on the proximate cause, if you cannot do science to understand the proximate cause, then you can't use it as such. It's like using a definition in its own definition. It doesn't work. It's circular. Therefore, what young Earth creationists and what AI young Earth creationists and AIG does is it starts off with this worldview of no, God is real, God exists, and so therefore God, everything that we see was done by God, and by that reasoning, if we understand that, we can then prove that God exists. That is circular. That is not how science works in any way whatsoever. Science validates itself, but it does not attempt to prove itself. It attempts to figure out, does what we know, is what we know actually reality? Is it our best description of reality? That is what science, in my opinion, does on an everyday basis, is to, at the core of it, try to understand physics, or understand the universe in which we live in a physical way, and to see whether that explanation fits into our overarching understanding. But when you have a Christian, when you have a metaphysical worldview, when you state that something has to exist that cannot be studied through science, which then in turn dictates what science is telling you after that, that is ultimately biased. And if it is biased, it is not and cannot be used as an appropriate explanation for reality. If you want to believe in God, like I do, great. Please do, or don't. But what you can't do, that is up to you. That is a personal choice. And that is not something that I am going to attempt to take away from you. That is not something I'm going to judge you on. That is not something that is going to affect our relationship really in any way. Well, it's going to affect our relationship because I would be able to connect with people who are Christian in a different way than I could if they were atheists. Different, not better, not worse, just different. So it would affect our relationship in that way. Uh, but I hope you understand what I'm getting to. Well, I hope you understand what I'm getting at is that um, your belief in the supernatural or the metaphysical is irrelevant from a judgmental standpoint in my eyes. However, so yeah, believe what you want to believe. Ultimately, not my not my problem. What is my problem is, as a scientist, is when you start to use God as a way to justify scientific phenomenon or physical phenomenon, because that is imposing a worldview on a universe that you cannot know is correct. And I know, and I could just almost hear a certain person's voice in the saying, "Well, God is right, and God is true. God exists, so obviously I can do that." Well, no, because again, I go back to what I was saying before: is that you cannot prove the existence of God. I don't believe you can disprove the existence of God. I certainly can't. Do not think you can do so from a logical standpoint. Why? Because God is a metaphysical entity. If we all go by the same definition, is all powerful, all knowing, and all present. Human logic is fallible. Anything that is fallible cannot have anything to say about something that is not. God, in its conception, is infallible. It is perfect. It is the only perfect thing in existence. If you believe in God, it is the only perfect thing. So for me, I refuse to accept the idea that anything that is in fact imperfect could prove or disprove something that is. So, because you cannot prove the existence of God, you cannot use it as the foundation of scientific thought. You are introducing an unacceptable bias, which means any conclusions that you draw from that bias are no longer going to be are going to shift and distort our version of reality to the point that we will, if we get to a certain regime and we are able to test certain things, such as the one-way speed of light or what have you, then I would posit that you're going to get things very, very wrong, that you are opening the door to being very, very wrong in very catastrophic ways. Which brings me back to control. Because we get to topics like abortion. We get to topics like homosexuality. You can even expand this into um, female rights, into women's rights, uh, aside from bodily autonomy. Autonomy. I'm talking about a woman's role in society. These can be certain viewpoints can be given some kind of authority by saying, "Oh, well, science says this. Life starts at conception, so therefore, if you have an abortion, you are in fact killing something. You are killing a living being. You are a murderer, and that has to be legal because murder bad." Science would tell you that homosexuality is a choice. Science would tell you that trans people don't exist. So therefore, why should I have gender neutral bathrooms to accommodate people who don't exist and actually are perverts who are going to take advantage of it anyway? Or we could go even further back and say that science tells us that women are in fact too emotional, and so therefore they cannot handle the responsibility of big boy jobs and big boy things like you know, corporate leadership, the presidency, voting, things of that nature. Or hell, we can go even further back and say, you know what? The brain, the skull capacity or the skull size of Negroes is smaller than Caucasians, which means that they are just naturally stupider. Science tells us this. I can pick up an encyclopedia from I think 1959 and it will tell me this. Science, it's a science fact that Negroes had smaller brains. If I go back to the 60s, I would be told it is a scientific fact that Negroes are, in fact, I'm not going to use the real world, but those people are, in fact, more prone to violence. It's science. Actually, I could do that now. I could show you statistics that say that blacks are just naturally, scientifically more prone to violence. And so these sorts of ideas lead to control. If I don't like the fact that people are having sex or being promiscuous or whatever the fuck, I'll just make it illegal for them to have abortions. So I will punish them for their uh, fornication, regardless of what it does to the woman or what it does to the child. They shouldn't have been fornicating, so therefore they're stuck with the consequences. You did it, you live with the consequence. God damn it. Or you think that two guys touching penises is icky, and you can't handle icky. You can't handle the notion of two people actually loving each other and regardless of what body they're in and wanting to explore physically the body of someone they are in love with. That's too icky for you to handle. So therefore that's got to be a choice. And not only and so because it is a choice, we can then therefore say that it is a choice similar to bestiality or diddling children. Those are also choices too. So those are bad. So therefore, touching dicks together, that's also bad. We don't like that. So because that's like you said, that's icky, and we can't handle icky. So yep, can't do that either. Or you know, um, having my daughter touched by someone who is one of them darkies, I can't handle that either because that might lead to fornicating because those darkies they only know about violence and sex. 'Cause them's be fornicators and murderers. Um, so therefore, them darkies have to be controlled somehow. I know. Let's put them into shackles because science tells us that we can do that. This is the type of shit that makes me so pissed that I go on 4-hour live streams where I become, shall we say, slightly unhinged. Because again, I keep saying this word and I keep coming back to it. It's about control and nothing else. It's about a certain type of person who believes that their worldview is correct. And not only is it correct, anyone who does not share that worldview is evil or is doing evil. That in itself is bullshit. The notion that you know what is best, that you know what the best course of action in life is is so unbelievably prideful. I can't even begin to describe it. Because one of the things that science has basically drilled into me is that I have to be open-minded. I have to be open to the possibility that I am wrong. And that includes my belief in God, which is why I have faith and not certainty, is that I have doubts about my belief in God. And because of those doubts, it forces me to readdress almost on a daily basis. Maybe not that much. It causes me to reaffirm or to look at, to analyze, to think about, to feel, to pray, to understand my relationship with this thing I can't prove, with this thing that I don't know, I can't describe to anyone, that I cannot, that, I talk about it, some people are going to look at me like I'm fucking insane. Because of these doubts, that is not something that I take for granted. That is not something I just blindly just follow. That is the realm of blind faith. If you think that you know the answer and you are absolute about it, why revisit the question? Why would you ever have to revisit the question if you know what's going on? But what science has taught me is that I can never know what is going on. There are variables outside of the system that I do not know, or if I know them, I do not understand them. Or if I know them and I understand them in isolation, I do not understand how they work as a whole. Because of the fact that I have a fallible brain, because of the fact that I have a limit to my intellectual capacity, I cannot know things to be certain in an absolute sense. So I cannot tell you if abortion is right or wrong. Absolutely. As I've said many times, I am pro-life. I am pro-life across the board. I do not believe in killing anyone for any reason. Yes, including self-defense. I am completely pro-life. However, in terms of the whole abortion issue, I can't get pregnant, guys. I know it's hard for me to admit, but I can't get pregnant. So the point is moot to me. So yeah, there you go. So yeah, can I tell you with absolute certainty that abortion is murder? No, I can't. And because of that, I cannot tell you what you're doing is wrong. I feel it is. I'm not going to judge anyone for having an abortion for whatever reason. I may not like the reasons why women have certain women have certain abortions or what have you. I may not like the reason, but again, this is a me problem. This has nothing to do with them. This is a me problem. I cannot tell you with absolute certainty that homosexuality is or is not a choice. I don't think it is because, I don't have a discussion with the captain and be like, "Hey, do we like boobies today or do we like dicks today? What do you think? What are you up for? Literally, what are you up for? Dicks or boobs today?" I don't have that conversation. I see something, I like something, I stand up and salute it. That's how that works. It's not a choice, never has been a choice. Uh, and if I've learned anything in my mental health journey, it's that I'm not unique in any way whatsoever. So I'm figuring that if it's not a choice for me, it's probably not a choice for you either, regardless of what makes your thing do whatever it does. Um, so I cannot tell you with absolute certainty that trans folks exist. I think they do. The science seems to be telling me it does. I also have, in my limited life experiences with trans folks, seems legit. I don't think they're lying to me. I don't think they're crazy. I don't think they're um, you know, deluded or anything of that nature. Okay, because I cannot absolutely tell you that these things are wrong. I am in no place at all to ever attempt to force someone to believe the same way that I do. It is morally wrong for me to strip away your free will, your God-given free will to be or not to be whoever the fuck you want to be or do or whatever you want, whatever it is you want to do. It is morally wrong to attempt to control the thoughts and minds and bodies of people in such a way to conform to your ideas of what is right and what is wrong. Now, you might be like, "Rob, what about murder? Is it murder wrong?" Well, as I just said, murder bad. I don't believe in killing anyone for any reason. However, that's not why I am for a prohibition against murder. I'm for a prohibition against murder and a prohibition against theft and basically all many of the other laws that we have, because if we did not have those, we would not have a progressive society. We would have a society, but I don't know which one it was, Hobbes or Locke, but basically I think we would devolve into the or dudette with the biggest stick wins, and that we would all basically just do whatever the dude or dudette with the biggest stick tells us to do. And I think that's a kind of a bullshit society. I do not think that's progressive in any way. I don't think it's fair in any way. So therefore, we need to have safeguards in place, such as murder bad, thieving bad, um, uh, having an unelected billionaire cut 10,000 jobs bad, or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs bad. These are types of things that I think should be illegal. These are the types of things that I think should be prohibited by law. All the other things, abortion, homosexuality, trans, women's, anyone's rights, anybody's rights, should not be regular or should not be made illegal or infringed upon because I think it is wrong. They should only be infringed if it is shown that indulging within those activities is detrimental to society as a whole, which abortion is not, which homosexuality is not, which trans is not, being a woman, not black, not none of these things, none of being any of these things, doing any of these things does not contribute to a decrease or a declining society. In fact, embracing some of these things leads to a better society, in my opinion, a fuller society, a more dynamic, more prosperous society. If we were more inclusive, if we had greater diversity of thought, plurality of yeah, plurality of thought, of plurality of experience. If we had more of that, that good. So yeah, all for that. But if you're if you're let's take the opposite example of free speech. Free speech, good, right? You should have the ability to say whatever it is you want to say, even if it is to salute a crowd of Republicans in a certain way, in a certain fascist way popularized in the 1940s. You should have the right to do that. However, you should not have the right to go into a burning or into a crowded room and shell and shout bomb, causing a stampede. When your actions cause a detriment, a real actual harm to society, then things should be infringed upon. Guns. I'm still uncertain about my stance about guns. I would love for guns to be outlawed. Um, I would love for there to be a complete prohibition on guns because I don't think that um, Americans have shown that we are responsible enough to own them as a society. I think that, maybe if someone took the guns away and we were good for 10 years, maybe we can start having some pistols back, you know. But right now, I don't think we can handle the responsibility of it. However, I also understand how our Constitution was created and why and so forth. And I understand that for better or for worse, the Second Amendment exists. And it does say that uh, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed, regulated militia, yada, yada, yada. It implies in there that there is some way that we should be able to own a gun. But should we be able to own a tank? No, I don't think anyone is on board with any rando buying a tank online or a nuke online or fuck just a ballistic missile, a conventional ballistic warhead. I don't think anyone is so enthused by the right of the Second Amendment. They'd be like, yeah, all right, fine. Let anybody have a ICBM. Yeah, it's in the Constitution, so fuck it. So obviously, the right to bear arms is infringed. There are limits. So ultimately, as a proper and well-ordered society, we should actually have discussions as to how we are going to well regulate the Second Amendment. But Americans have demonstrated repeatedly we are not responsible as a society to do such a thing. So my hence my knee jerk, we just can't have guns. Till we learn how to play nice with guns, we can't have any of them. I think I learned this sort of thing back in the third grade. So who knows? Apologize. I haven't really been paying attention to the chat. I've just been kind of going off and all that kind of good stuff. So I hope people don't feel as if I'm ignoring them or what have you. I also don't have my glasses. These are just shitty reading glasses. So, eh. Um, so science cannot be, to kind of wrap this up. It is wrong to use faith or a dogmatic system of faith to dictate how science is done or how science should be interpreted. Science cannot be made to be cannot be manipulated to work in such a way in order to align with a metaphysical supposition. So, two-way speed of light. Is it possible? Sure. Parcats are also possible. Yes, two-headed parrots with 8 cat legs who barely survive as as a civilization or as a species because so many of them sadly starve because they bicker with each other on where to eat. That is also possible. However, there is no physical motivation for them to exist, as there is no physical motivation for why there should be an isotropy, uh, anisotropy to the speed of light. The only motivation for why the speed of light should be different in any particular direction is to make God work, is to make your interpretation of the Bible work. That is not how science is done, and it is wrong to try to make it work that way. On the flip side, I don't think that I had a flip side. I forgot what the flip side was. Um, I mean, I guess on the flip side, I do not think it's appropriate either to state that science is in some way superior to religion or faith. That my faith is somehow not appropriate. That my believing in God and finding a moral direction within the teachings of the Bible, that is in some way wrong, evil, or shouldn't be done because of reasons. I'm not entirely certain. Um, Usually, I hear this sort of sentiments from atheists, anti-theists, people on the secular side of things. So I guess the science side of things. So yeah. Here, let me look at these chats. Uh, I think Tony went to bed, probably because I was giving him too much of a headache. Doo, doo, doo. Evil is a social construct. Nobody is inherently evil. Ah, see, this is where my inner Nietzsche comes into it. Comes into play, and why one of the faults I have with is God evil? That sort of argument is you're gonna have to define to me what evil is. And yes, you're going to have to define to me what your definition of evil is in specific, not it does harm or whatever. Because one of the problems I had with the pagan philosophy or pagan theology was one of the golden rule, as it was do as you will and harm none, which I found to be exceedingly naive. A, what is harm? And two, how do I determine that? Because you could make the statement that if I buy an iPhone, I am doing harm because I am supporting a company which has had in the past sweatshops, which has done significant harm to sections of the population in East Asia. So if it's harm if I cannot do harm, how many generations of harm can I not is okay? How many rungs down that ladder? Um, how far away from that harm is it okay for me to do as I will and not harm anyone? Same thing with God. And the problem I also have with that notion is again a distance sort of realm in that we are incapable of seeing the entirety of the system. So while something may look evil in the local environment, if we were to look at it at a greater height, could it possibly be that that is in fact actually not evil, but good in the long run? So these are reasons why I also have no patience with with rhetorical arguments as to whether or not God is good. All right. We, I think, is the Nederlanders. Nederlander is such a cool word to say. Have no guns unless allowed. Hunters have permits and control wildlife, for example. Almost all people don't need them in a civil urban society. Yeah. So, um, glasses on, behave now, people. Yes, exactly. I can now read your comments. Um, the thing is that I will say to that is, yes, do people need guns? No, I don't think anyone needs a gun. Well, except for wildlife control, and even then, could you not find a non-lethal way of controlling the population? I don't know. Not a population control person, but I used to shoot. I liked it. The reason why I stopped shooting is because I couldn't. I literally cannot trust myself with having access to a firearm. Yay! But if I were more neurotypical, if I didn't have that threat, I would probably own a gun because I like shooting. It's just a fun thing to do. Targets, I should say. I like shooting targets. Nothing else. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm an American and we have glorified guns. We have fetishized guns at whatever, one point or another. But I like doing it, and I understand why other people would like doing it. I was actually good at it. One of the few things I think I actually had a natural talent for was shooting. Um, so I don't think it's about need. Is that guns do harm, and I know this is a Republican talking point, but many things do many things can be used to do harm. Uh, a gun is but a tool. A knife is a tool. A hammer is but a tool. The difference between a gun and a knife is that a gun allows for mass casualty events to happen easier. It is much easier to kill whole lots of to to take out a whole bunch of people or do a whole lot of injury with a gun than it is with a knife, but it isn't impossible. There have been mass casualty knife events. There have been mass casualty gun or car events. So I don't exactly buy that argument of we need to get rid of them simply because they are easier. They are a tool that can be easily used to cause mass harm. Um, I think they should be regulated. Ultimately, I think they should be because of the fact that uh, they allow for harm to be done in an easier way by by people uh, who may not be physically able to harm as many people. If you put a gun into someone's hand, regardless of what their physical condition is, they can probably harm a lot more people than if you put a knife in that same person's hands. Same person probably or very well may not be physically capable of doing a whole bunch of damage. So I think guns can be should be regulated. Cars are regulated. Seatbelts are regulated. Drinking and driving is regulated. I think I am a big fan of allowing the existence of guns, but heavily regulating the shit out of their use. So I do not see I I cannot logic, particularly in the states, particularly with the existence of the Second Amendment. I cannot see um, a logical reason for the complete prohibition of firearms. I just um, cannot accept it or cannot see that reasoning. I think firearms should be allowed but regulated. Now we can get into the weeds with should AR-15s be illegal? I don't know. Have we tried regulating them yet? The answer to that question is obviously no. So again, I am science. I am. I like data. I like to be motivated by data. Personally, I don't think and I know, and it's obvious. There are obvious reasons why this is not. This is the case, but there have been no major gun studies because until fairly recently, I think early 2022, it was actually federal. It was illegal at the federal level to actually um, it's either illegal to do gun studies or you couldn't get federal funding for research studies into guns. So we just haven't done the research in this country. So until that is the case, I don't know if we can. I, I like policy that's motivated by science. So um, guns are needed to avoid home invasions, which aren't often. Therefore, guns are needed. Um, let's see. Real Cygnus, are you arguing for gun control? Not gun control? We either need a Second Amendment guarantee for unfettered access to weapons, or we need the ridiculous military budget we have. See, I don't know. Again, unless I'm misunderstanding you, that seems to be either all guns should be legal or none of them should be legal. I think there is a happy medium. We do have limitations on every other right that is in the Bill of in the Constitution. So why not guns? Obviously, you can't say you don't have press is not completely free. It cannot publish without penalty. National secrets. You can't you can't libel people. You can't slander them without repercussions. So freedom of press. People can't just randomly show up in the middle of an intersection and just start chanting "We like dicks" without a permit. These rights of to gather is also is not absolute. So guns should. I don't see how guns should be a one way thing or another. I honestly, again, this may be because of my pro-life stance. I do not accept the argument of guns are needed to stop home invasions. Because one, how often are home invasions? Like with what kind of frequency are we talking about in terms of home invasions? Also, cannot home invasions be prevented by non-lethal means? Locks, chains, bars? I mean, why do we why is it unreasonable? I mean, if you're afraid of people breaking into your house, just make your house more impenetrable. Um, and so why a gun? Why do you need a gun to protect your family? Just make your house like I just and if your argument is that it's harder or if your argument is that it's more expensive, we are talking about a human life, the potential of killing someone. And studies have shown that, or the statistics show that people who keep guns in the house, they're you when they are used, they are more often used on household members than they are on intruders. So again, I do not accept, or I cannot accept the idea of home protection as being as a necessity for a gun or personal protection as a necessity for a gun unless you are a police officer. And in that case, I also have questions as to whether or not cops should have guns. Um, but I'm not a cop, and I understand that I don't know what it's like to be a cop. I know what I would like life to be, but as I mentioned in the very beginning of this, what I would like life to be and what life is can sometimes be very different things because life doesn't give a fuck what I have to say or how I would like life to be. So, um, so yeah. Uh, the Dora says so. Guns are needed to avoid home invasions, which aren't known off other countries. Out guns, therefore guns are needed. I fail to see logic in your statement. If I just said fine if you can get them away from criminals too. They all have them. Um, this is things I gotta say. This is bordering on, and I don't want to misrepresent you, but my knee jerk reaction to where this conversation seems to be going is um, the only the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And I don't think that's ever been borne out anywhere. I mean, sure, it may have happened at some point, but I'm pretty sure the opposite has happened also. So, um, any man can kick in virtually any door. I'm gonna need a citation on that. Um, I mean, any door? You got a deadbolt. You got a few deadbolts on there. You put on a bar on the back of it. Put bars in your windows. I'm putting an alarm system in, a really loud alarm system in. Um, I don't. I mean, although in a way, the argument against what I'm talking about is actually poverty. In that, essentially, my way of looking at things is biased towards people who are affluent because guns would be presumably cheaper than being able to fully fortify your home, assuming you feel that is necessary. I don't think home invasions would be necessary or would be gone away because of if you ended poverty. I think that um, crime is while crime is definitely motivated by circumstance, it's also motivated by people who are just fucking evil, who just feel that they are entitled to other people's shit. So I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. But I don't know. Like I said, I I do not see the rationale. If someone broke into my house, they are free to take whatever the fuck they want because my worldview is if they are going to that much trouble that they're going to break into my place, particularly armed, then they apparently need my shit more than I do. So I'm going to give it to them. Hopefully, they won't shoot me. They won't thank me by shooting me in the face in the process. But if they want my shit, they can have my shit. Granted, that is not to say that I will not want the cops to go and arrest this individual and potentially get my shit back. But in the moment, they can have my shit. Apparently, they need it more than I do. But again, I am that is my view. I am not, and I will not impose that on others by stating that or advocating that all guns should be illegal because you know you feel that you need one in order to protect yourself and your family. It's also easy for me to say these things because I don't have a family, um, so I don't know what it would be like if I had an 8-year-old daughter or 10-year-old son or whatever. I don't know what it would be like to have those people in my home and then have some armed guy kick in the door and start waving it around. I don't, obviously, those are two different situations. I don't know how I'd react in them. I'd like to think that I was a principled individual and I would still state that they can take whatever the fuck they want. And I wouldn't want to shoot them, but you know, that's where I'm at. We need residential door reform. I don't know. Maybe, maybe. So yeah. Oh, did you guys know? I bet you didn't know this. Um, Woolly mammoths aren't woolly. Um, I learned recently that woolly mammoths didn't actually have wool on them. Um, so yeah, we were all wrong. We really should change the name. We should call them hairy mammoths, not woolly mammoths. Uh, sorry, Clive. I'm actually about to close this stream out. I've gone for 2 hours. I don't think I'm going to go for another two. And yeah, I need to my sleep schedule is completely fucked at this point, so I need to figure out something. Um, something. So anyway, wool semantics. I don't know what you mean by that. Do you know what I'm referring to? Team Formula One dog racing. Have you seen the? Yes, I've seen the headlines and stuff. I haven't actually looked into it. Um, Now that is some evil scientist shit right there. Before I wanted to be an astronomer, I wanted to be a geneticist, and that's the type of shit that made me want to be a geneticist. Is yeah, fucking with fucking with genes in order to create mutant species. That is some evil mad scientist shit right there. Okay. My favorite still is the glow in the dark animals, like the bioluminescent mice, bioluminescent dogs, or whatever the fuck they've come up with. Like that is just, I just can't. Like, you guys realize that you're Bond villains. Geneticists are Bond who do that are Bond villains. Like what the fuck? Are their labs really in subterranean layers? Because if not, they should be. So I don't know. Woolly thinking doesn't mean thinking about wool. It's true. I heard um, that someone else actually reviewed that. I only seen this person around peripherally. Name is Planet Peterson. I think Peterson also reviewed that debate or that conversation between um, Tony and Will. But from my understanding, he didn't get too very far, or he didn't finish it off because Toon and Markley actually popped in and did stuff, I guess. So not sure. So I don't know if any of you saw that. I'm just and as I mentioned in on my server, I'm curious as to how Toon what Toon feels or how Toon feels about the whole young Earth creationist side of Will Duffy because I'm fairly confident the two of them are friends, like solid friends, not just hey we went to Antarctica together friends. But so I'm curious about that. Anyone knows? Grown your own replacement parts. I don't. The presence of Toon Markley was relevant. I don't know the present. It wasn't a long debate. Well, true. I don't know. Peterson's stream was I think 2 hours or so. You know what? I'll just fucking check it out. I'll just watch it. But yeah. All right. Hopefully, I know. Again, this stream was set up pretty much at the last minute because of Fever Dream. Because I have been asked more than usual lately about my own faith and why I believe in certain things and things of that nature. So hopefully, that has provided a bit more clarity as to where I stand in terms of my own faith, where my faith journey came from, and how I reconcile science and faith, and the lines that I will draw in terms of what is and is not permissible, and particularly the lines that are drawn as to what is and is not moral. Again, it is not. Do not think it is. I do not think it is appropriate to use science to justify religious thought, and I do not think it is moral to impose religious thought onto an unwilling population. So, What happens in Antarctica stays in Antarctica. You know what? I don't want to know. Nope. No, that's putting unpleasant thoughts in my head. So no, 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 no. Next collab with whom? Between whom? Oh, I also want to put it out there. If there is a Final Experiment 2 that attempts to, I don't know, prove that the Earth is anywhere, is the age of the Earth is in the 10,000s of years. If there is one that attempts to prove that um, God exists, basically, if there's a Final Experiment 2 that has anything to do with attempting to prove, hit the wrong button, attempts to prove anything related to young Earth creationists, I hope that I will be considered as one of the golden ticket winners to participate in that experiment. I mean, fuck, if they invited if they invited Witsit, then I think I would make a perfect counterpoint candidate to go to whatever glorious locale that they're going to choose in order to prove that the Earth is 10,000 years old. What I'm trying to do, and again, my own health is, I basically am standing on tripping over my own dick, as they would say. My next collab would be with Tony, in with regards to the young Earth creationist sphere. My next stream is going to be solo. It is going to be me talking about various aspects of how young Earth creationists distort the definition of science so they can make claims that the Bible is in fact a work is a scientific work. So, but yes, I do want to collab with Tony at some point and have a sort of regular back and forth where we look at videos regarding young Earth creationists from AIJ, from PragerU, or whatever, and just kind of run through them and talk about how bullshit they are. So, howdy, Blue. I'm just about to end, actually. So that with that being said, my name is Professor Parks, PhD. I make content on astronomy, mental health, and science skepticism. Please, if you like this sort of content, please like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to help me and my efforts at the observatory, I am the director of the George Mason Observatory. Please consider becoming a Patreon. All monies from there go to helping us upgrade the observatory. I am very excited because I actually got grant money that I did not realize that I had. Apparently, I applied for it. They gave me part of it last year, and now they are giving me the rest of it this year. And I was not aware they were going to do that. So I am getting 4 more 8-inch telescopes with laptops and cameras. Now all I got to do is I have all this equipment, and now I have to go beg someone to build me a building to stick it all in. So that'll be fun. But yeah, I'm very excited about that. So any help that you want to, if any financial support you'd like to give in order to helping me build my observatory, my new observatory, please consider that. If you'd like to help me out personally and put money in my pocket, please consider becoming a channel member. I am attempting to put out content for members only, specifically in relation to the observatory, and more specifically in relation to how the observatory ties into the NASA Landalt mission that was awarded to one of our professors here, Dr. Peter Plabchan. Our observatory will be used as one of the ground stations for that mission. Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you all for watching. And again, Clive, Blue, thanks for popping in. I know it's late or early or what have you. And you only caught the tail end of this, but hopefully I will do this at a more reasonable hour, and I'll see you next time. So peace out. Clear sky.